Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We pray. Almighty God, you are the Lord, and you do whatever seems good to you. As every lawful authority on earth comes from you, uphold in righteousness and health our nation with its leaders. Call to repentance those who have forgotten you. Do not let disaster befall us, but preserve us in peace and quietness. Preserve in wisdom and honor Joseph, our president, Tony, our governor, and all public servants, including our armed forces, police, and first responders. Send peace in our time. Teach us to examine our hearts that we may recognize our own sinful inclination toward envy, malice, hatred, and envy. Help us by your word and spirit to search our hearts and root out the evil that would lead to strife and discord, so that our lives may be at peace with all people. Fill us with zeal for the work before us, and make each of us high in purpose, wise in counsel, and unwavering in duty. Amen.
I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
So when you go home tonight, you'll be able to go on YouTube and be able to catch the meeting you were at, right? Okay. Roll call. We have
19 present. Supervisor Peisler.
I would move it onto the agenda. Would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Supervisor Kinnard, second. Supervisor Swagel. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Minutes from the previous board meeting which you have reviewed. Would look for a motion to approve those minutes. Supervisor Augustine. Second by Supervisor Kroll. Any questions on those minutes, corrections? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Citizens input.
None.
Does anyone wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak? Appointments. Kewaunee County, first appointment.
Kewaunee County Pay Plan Subcommittee.
Would look for a motion to approve those appointments. Supervisor Haskey, second by Supervisor Swagel. Any discussion? Yes.
I just want to know if it's necessary to have an advisory member on there.
I chose to appoint him. He has a lot of history with it. So I had asked him to serve on it. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Are we ready for the next?
ADRC Board. Citizen members. Paul Rabbit, Sandy Schleiss-Ullman, Jim Hathaway.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Supervisor Romden, second by Poppy. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On the next one, we have a change last minute. It would be Joanne Lazansky and Supervisor Linda Teskey rather than Supervisor Swagel. Last minute, fortunately, Supervisor Swagel was understanding. Apparently email was not received, and there was a strong desire to remain on the committee, and Supervisor Swagel was amenable, and so I'm amenable to the change.
I'll make a motion.
Supervisor Kinnard,
Second.
second by Romden. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Annual reports or other reports. Going to turn it over to the representatives from Bug Tussle. We are looking forward to hearing your update and where things stand, and if you could introduce yourselves. I think it's a different pool of talent, some of you, than the last time.
Yes, it is. My name is Mitch Olson. I started with Bug Tussle at the beginning of this year. If any of you worked with Jay Went previously, I'm loosely filling into his job, but I'm going to be your contact points for the board or anyone else who has any questions from Bug Tussle moving forward. One of my roles is kind of participating in community projects like this. I'm originally from very small northern Wisconsin, Phillips. So I'm very sympathetic to the small town plight of not having any internet access. I'm a lawyer by trade. I was in private practice in Manitowoc County for 5 years prior to going to Bug Tussle, and projects like this are part of the reason why I made the jump. So if you guys have any questions or anything after today's meeting, I'm your guy. And then Chad is going to take over with his presentation.
So we have a lawyer on this committee now. I don't know. How should we take that? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Chad Lupke, Chief Marketing Officer for Bug Tussle. Also have Scott Niskovitz with us tonight. He's our Business Development Manager in this part of the state. Once the towers do become online, he'll be your go-to person here in the county for broadband and AT&T FirstNet services. So here's a little overview of what we'll discuss tonight. Wanted to start by a quick look at what Bug Tussle has been doing, looking back on 2020. 2020 was a fantastic year for us. We built approximately 180 new cell towers throughout the state. To put that in perspective, in previous years, 2019, we built 50 towers. In 2018, 35 approximately. So this was a huge leap forward for Bug Tussle in our footprint across the upper Midwest, and we're looking to expand on that in the coming years. We currently have 178 broadband internet sites across 24 Wisconsin counties and nearly 350 sites for AT&T across Wisconsin. We're looking to venture into 14 additional counties in Wisconsin this coming year and 20 counties in southwestern Iowa on our build out for AT&T there. Total broadband internet subscribers across Wisconsin is just over 6,300. We grew that number by about 1,600 last year. We're very proud of that. Scott and his fellow business development managers across the state have been working very hard with their boots on the ground, getting into service to folks in smaller communities, rural communities across Wisconsin. Total investment for Hilbert Communications and Bug Tussle is nearly $70 million. So very, very proud of that. Now kind of getting into the meat of why we're here tonight, and that's to talk about the build out and the grant project here in Kewaunee County. Currently aiming for 7 co-location sites on existing towers and 5 new builds. The last update I believe we gave you, we had 6 co-locations and 6 new builds. But recently we've had some pushback in the Tishmill areas from the local community there about having a new tower. So we're currently looking for additional co-location sites or perhaps a silo or something of the sort to get folks in that area service. So that one is currently pending. I hope everybody can see the slide okay. I know the print is a little bit small, but I will go through one by one quickly. We have the Casco site there in the center of the state. That will be a co-location on a tower owned by our private equity partner, Vertical Bridge, out of Florida. We're going to get this lease signed very quickly on that, and we're hoping to have that, or expect to have that on the air here next month in February with live broadband service. West Kewaunee, that's a co-location. We signed that agreement with Kewaunee County, and we look forward to getting that on the air here in February as well. Algoma, the sites at Algoma and Kewaunee, we're looking at co-locations also with our private equity partner, Vertical Bridge, and looking to get those online in March. Luxembourg Tower here locally is a tower wholly owned by Bug Tussle, and we expect that one to come online in March as well. Norman is another agreement we have here with the county. That will be pretty straightforward, and we anticipate, again, that equipment going on sometime in March and going live. Tish Mills, like I mentioned earlier, we're still confident we're going to be able to find a site and provide service relatively quickly. So here by late winter, early spring, we expect to have service to those folks down there. Our new builds, you can see, are the green dots on that map for Bayview, Bolt, East Croc, Gregerville, and Ryan's Corner. We have leases signed for all 5 of those. We have zoning approved on 3, Bayview, East Croc, and Ryan's Corner. And we expect zoning to be approved here for Bolt and Gregerville here in the next 2 weeks. Very excited about that. I'll go through a few more slides, folks, and then I can come back to this and we can address any concerns one by one. Here's a little bit of our radio frequency prediction mapping. When this is all said and done, we believe we're going to be able to cover approximately 90% of the county. You can see a few holes here in the coverage, just due to placement of the tower or its reach here on the far western portion, and then up through the center, there's a few holes. But we do believe we're going to be able to cover those areas with follow-on micropops and additional silo sites if necessary to really blanket the entire county the best we can and reach as many customers as we can. And there's a little chart here. Obviously, red is the strongest signal, down to blue would be the weakest signal. And we have ways to amplify that as well. The technology we'll be using a cambium point to multi-point technology. Works very well in terrain like we have in Kewaunee here. We'll be backing that up with a redundant fiber optic cable and microwave antenna type network. We're very, very hopeful that the grant that we applied for here just recently with Kewaunee County for the fiber project, we're hoping that gets approved, knock on wood. In the event that it doesn't, though, we will definitely pursue other options for additional fiber optic redundancy. Each tower will have that, like I said, that cambium point-to-point, multi-point technology. It will be this is kind of in the weeds, but it's going to have a 450M Medusa, which is the latest and greatest from Cambium. And we should be able to serve about 250 customers per site at 25 meg. So that's very good. Normally, we're very happy to have 80 to 100 customers per site. So we're going to have plenty of capacity to serve folks here in Kewaunee. For whatever reason, if there's more than 250 that are interested, we will install more equipment and get those folks service. A little look at the population that we anticipate we're going to cover on each site. I won't bore you with the numbers, but you can see that in the second column there. That number that we believe we can cover, we divide that by 2.5. That gives us the typical number of households. And then you can see there in the far right column, the number of households we'll believe we'll be able to cover adequately throughout this project. Now, my next series of 5 or 6 slides, I have here individual RF propagation for the individual sites. Here we have Algoma and Bayview. We have Casco and Bolt, East Croc, Gregerville, Kewaunee, and Luxembourg, Norman, Ryan's Corner, Tish Mills. Again, that's going to probably shift a little bit. We have the West Kewaunee site. And I'll be happy as questions arise throughout the rest of this presentation. I can go back to these individually. I'd like to make a quick plug for AT&T. In addition to our broadband services, we're also an authorized retailer. We have a national agency agreement with AT&T, very unique for a company of our size. We have a store in Baraboo, Wisconsin. But in addition to that, Scott over here and his fellow business development managers can sell AT&T a full complement of AT&T products and services across the United States. So he could sell you a phone tonight, right, Scott? I think you could sell him a phone. You'd sell him a hotspot. If you're really in a pinch, the AWI hotspot works very well for AT&T. It comes at $60 a month for 50 gigabytes of service. I think that's right, Scott? And for $100 a month, you can get 100 gigabytes of service. So if you're really in a pinch until we come online with some of these facilities, that's a great option for you, as well as AT&T TV, which is a great substitute for cable television. And additionally, with AT&T comes the FirstNet program, specifically designed for first responders. Long and short of it, it's basically a 40% discount, and your voice and data traffic gets prioritized above all other traffic. This is available to a wide swath of folks, not just police and fire, but EMTs, nurses, doctors, medical professionals, National Guard, utility workers, and the sort. So a really great program. Myself or Scott would be happy to come back and talk specifically about AT&T FirstNet on a different occasion. But I know we're here tonight to talk about the site. So in line with the grant award, we made that pledge that we are going to provide outstanding service at no more than $50 for 25 megabytes per second, and we plan on doing that. And you can see for the different levels, if you're far from the tower for whatever reason, only able to get 8 megabytes of service, that price will actually come down from $50. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road, is in our residential installations. Part of the fixed wireless industry, this is one of the most challenging parts, is actually getting the service. We can see the tower, but actually getting the customer hooked up. Much different than a traditional provider where they're punching a hole through your siding and they're flipping the switch and you've got your internet or you've got your cable. It's much more challenging on a day-to-day basis for rural providers. But our team of 4 installers spread across the state are very experienced, and they'll go the extra lengths, as you can see here from our installer Ken here on top of the silos. He's actually installing a bridge. So the signal from the tower will go to that bridge and then onto the house from there. So our standard installation activation is $149.99, $10 per month equipment rental fee, and then additional charges do apply if we need it in the event that we need to do a silo climb or install a tripod or that sort of thing. Additional program we have distance learning program. That's a program we launched last summer to help school districts to reach students in the far reaches of their districts as they're stuck at home doing remote learning, just to give districts an extra option for families and students that are learning remotely. So Scott or myself would be happy to talk about that at another time. With that, I'm happy to open it up for questions, whatever you may have. Thank you.
We have questions.
I have a question. Yes, I'm just wondering, when can I get a copy? Where could I get a copy of this presentation?
I can send one out.
Okay.
Or if you email it to me, I'll send it out to the board.
Okay, great. Perfect. No problem.
That'd be great. Thank you.
No problem. And again, these just for the prediction mapping, this is a prediction. So this isn't set by any means. Sites might shift a mile or two one way or another. So they can change. So in the event that we find different pockets of population and whatnot, we might shift the site slightly. So don't hold us exactly to this.
Supervisor Vollenweider.
So for someone in the Casco area, for example, you were showing a February activation. How are those people going to be aware of how to subscribe and get install?
Well, we have
February's right around the corner.
We have Scott right here, and he's going to do a terrific job, and our marketing team back at Bug Tussle as well. We will put out a lot of word through social media, through traditional advertising, billboards, door hangers. We will make it known throughout folks here, different government bodies, that sort of thing, that service is live. So
excellent. Yeah, because I've been asked by people already, and I wasn't aware it could be quite that early as February. So that's great news. So
yeah, we're very excited about it.
And when you say on air, you mean it's go time.
Yep. You're hooked up. You're online. Yep.
So these, so when it says for Luxembourg, March, that's going to happen.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll remember that. Other questions? All right. Very good. Thank you very much. And we'll look forward to things being up.
Any business cards you want? We have a few rate cards as well we can leave with you.
Excellent. Yes.
You feel free to share, and I know Scott has some, and maybe some business cards if you want to leave them with them, Scott. Thank you again for having us.
Yes, thank you for coming. Thanks for keeping us up to date. Okay. So, did you give me one?
Yeah, I don't need them.
I have one of these. And,
I'll need one card for sure.
okay. You give me. I don't have yours, right? Oh, yours doesn't exist. I don't need to get a hold of you then, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's working.
As long as I got at least one person. Okay, excellent. Very good. I'm going to turn it over then to Venture Architects, John Kane. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As we're warming up the screen, I just want to reflect on the fact that I think it was this past summer, I remember coming here with my mask and we were in this room, that I had an opportunity to meet with all of you and do a brief overview of the work that we'd been doing to date on the study, both phase 1 and phase 2. What we want to do this evening is talk about the possibility of moving into the phase 3 portion of the project. You will have in front of you a handout that will be the presentation that I'll make for you this evening. I know you probably will have many questions when we're done. Each of the pages in the presentation is numbered. So if you have specific questions on anything in the document, you can simply please refer to the actual page number.
Can you shut this down? Just the presentation. Back to the screen.
I don't want to do that. I don't know. It's past me. Oh, yeah. Perhaps. Glasses.
One second.
Any questions before we start? Here it comes. It takes a bit. Okay. Thank you for your patience. This will be the presentation that I want to make with you this evening. There are 5 topics that I want to cover with you. I want to review with you briefly the concepts that bring us to where we are this evening. the diagrams that I'll share with you, the budget development that's been prepared. And I should mention that Britt Samuels is in the back. Britt, wave your hand. He's with the Samuels Group. They are a construction manager contractor. They did the cost estimating for the work that you'll see this evening and would be doing the work going forward. They're actively involved in building the new jail project in Calumet County to the west of you. And we're working with them also on a number of projects around the state. So there'll be a budget that I'll share with you briefly. The really important topic this evening is the phase 3 and the recommendation by the committee to move forward with that work. I'll spend some time describing what the scope of that work is in fair detail. We'll talk about the cost of that, and then perhaps most importantly, why phase 3 is needed to move this project forward in the coming years. So very briefly, just as an understanding as to where we've been so far, we're currently under contract with the area that's labeled your study, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 was the needs assessment, where we talked about studying the number of beds that would be required, as well as spent a lot of time talking about the condition of the existing building. And all of that was developed in a final report, which I believe many of you have. That was approved, and we moved into phase 2, where we developed, I believe, 5 or 6 different options for how to meet the needs of Kewaunee County, both with regards to the sheriff and the jail. And there was a recommendation that came at that point initially to build a combined facility on the cornfield site south of your campus that include both the jail, the sheriff, and 911, as well as a sheriff's garage. And that was the final recommendation of phase 2. We were asked to come back and reevaluate the scope of that, and it was downsized to a jail-only project, which is what I will be presenting to you this evening. So where we are tonight, we've completed phase 1 and phase 2, and you have now in front of you a decision as to whether you want to proceed with phase 3, the schematic design phase. Going forward from there, future phases would include detailed design as well as the actual construction, and those are shown to the right. So that's a rough overview of the scope of the project. This is what we developed as that jail-only concept. If you're familiar with the site, north is going to be up. You can see your campus to the north and the top edge of the slide, the ballpark to the right of that. So this is where the building might be placed. It's a single-story building. There'll be parking for both staff as well as the public. That's the diagram of the building on its site. More importantly, as it diagrams in concept, the portion that looks like a circus wagon, very colorful, that's the housing pod shown diagrammatically. And then the green area represents all the support functions for the jail. There's a piece that sticks out on the top, that's the garage or the sally port. And then there are other functions that drive and support the jail pod. That little, how would I call that? What's that color? What would you describe? Pink serves as a new main entrance for the complex. And then there are areas that are shown dashed. There's an area to the right that shows where a sheriff's office could be built in the future as a future phase, as well as a garage. And then the piece going to the south, if someday a decision were made to relocate the court's functions from the downtown to this campus, there's provision to allow that to happen as well. None of those future phases are required to bring the jail project forward. It's simply that we're providing placeholders for those aspects should they go forward in the future, but they're not part of the discussion tonight. So it's roughly a 45,000 square foot building. The budget that has been developed, you can see the numbers on the top, 16.9 is the construction number. On our projects, we talk about construction and we talk about project numbers. To get between construction and project, we identify that there are a number of other non-construction budget items that the county would incur over the course of the project. We typically budget 20% for that. That's just a placeholder for the 20%. In phase 3, we would go into much more detail to actually define what that 20%, and it could easily be less than that. So right now, given the diagrams that we're talking about and the work done to date, it's roughly a $20 million project cost. So phase 3, and this work comes out of our contract that we have with you currently. I am not seeing that slide on this screen, so I'm gonna kind of stand over here a little bit. You can really kind of read this for yourself. There are going to be drawings that will be provided, and there will be a series of system narratives. So, and I'll give you some examples of those in just a minute. So a more detailed site plan, actual architectural floor plans, building elevations and sections, diagrams from our engineers that talk about the various systems that will go into the building. And then those systems are outlined for you on the slide, from structural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, so on and so forth. So the work that's being done is not just by our architectural staff, but our entire architectural engineering team that you've hired to do all 3 phases of the project. And they've all been involved in the phases that have led up to where we are this evening. So this represents roughly 15% of a normal architectural service. So if the entire work that we would do over the course of the project represented 100%, this first phase represents 15%. And this is work that if, let's say, the project were not to move forward in the next year or so through referendums, et cetera, it's not work that you've lost, because you can always rely on this as trusting that the project does move forward in the future. So I want you to understand that. This is work that's not throwaway work by any means at all. There's a lot of time and effort put into a project such as this. We spend a lot of time with the sheriff and their staff in developing plans. We talk a lot about function. We've done some touring already with the sheriff's staff and others from your county. A jail is not just a jail. It's not a prototype. Projects like these are very unique, and each one is really tailored specifically to the needs of that individual county. Other work that we'll be providing to you that I think is also important will help you in your public relations. So we'll provide with you a lot of visual imagery, colored site plans, building floor plans, 3D renderings, both of the exterior and interior. This is material that people would like to see. They want to know where their money's going. Project descriptions that can be provided to you and put into websites, et cetera. So I also offer some other thoughts here as well. Not only do you get construction and project cost estimates, we spend a lot of time developing a staffing plan with the sheriff and your regional jail inspector that you can do with the actual floor plan. Staffing and the costs for staffing will far exceed the actual cost of the construction of the building, and we want to be accurate in that regard. Our engineers can provide you with life cycle cost analysis, and then a schedule for the construction. And then, of course, final presentations that we would be making not only to you, the county board, but we would anticipate making presentations to your community as well in support of your referendum that I think I'm anticipating you're talking about having. So we partner with you on these projects. We've been here for 2 years already. We value the relationship that we have with you, and we love to keep it going forward. I brought a couple samples of the kind of material that you would see as part of this work. This happens to be a project currently in detailed design. Likewise with the Samuels Group, this is in Trumpealo County, Whitehall, Wisconsin, over near Eau Claire. This is a brand new justice center. So this is one of many illustrations and visualizations that we provided to the county as part of a campaign to fund the project. So this is just one image of that. I show that to you. And then this happens to be a part of that building, the jail for them, the pod, and then the support area. And I want to reinforce what I had said before. Each project is very unique. and the time and the work that's gone into this, working with Trumbull County staff, jail administrator, et cetera, the regional jail inspector. We probably had a dozen meetings separately just to plan out this portion of the project. And that's the kind of work we'll be doing with you, your sheriff, and their staff. This is language that comes out of the contract that we have with you currently. It was dated back in January, roughly 2 years ago. What I labeled as phase 3, the schematic design. This is in a more simplified version out of our contract, the work that we would be doing. And to translate or to define the cost of this phase, we would start with the total fee for the project at 6.4% and then take 15% of that, which represents the schematic design portion. So why the need for phase 3? And I know there's been a lot of question about that. Certainly you're going to get a lot of much more detailed information than you currently have. So accuracy becomes really important. We have a better understanding of the site and its site development costs, which now is simply a budget on a piece of paper. We have a better understanding of the staffing needs and their costs. You have a better understanding of all the building system descriptions and the associated utility costs. And I think that ultimately adds to the final reason, the reason why is that it provides you with greater credibility as you go back out into the community and talk about the project and its needs. It demonstrates that you've made a commitment to move forward, to take the time and the money, hard money that you have, to bring forward with the project at a much more detailed level than where we currently are. So with that, any questions that you have?
Yes.
Did you ask a supervisor, Jack? Supervisor Wilkos, did you ask a question? You have to turn on the green. We can't hear you.
How many cells are there going to be in the jail?
Slightly under 100, Matt. How many beds do we have in the pod now? 51 to 86.
51 to 86. So that's roughly about 250,000 per cell, huh?
I'd have to get my calculator out.
Well, that's pretty close.
Yeah.
That's pretty high, isn't it?
Well, and I'll add to it that the first cells originally in the building, yeah, that's going to be a greater cost, but then so initially, right, you're going to have those initial costs to the building, but then as that need arises to add, you're not necessarily laying more brick and mortar. We're going to have that manufactured with wall hangers that if down the road the need arises, then all we're doing is we're basically hanging bunks. We're able to raise capacity just by simply adding bunks to the pre-existing dorms. So that cost, when you look at, scale top to bottom, you're right in those smaller numbers. The scale of operations, if you want to call that, is like anything else versus the scale of operations is something greater. The good news is, as far as staffing, which is always our greatest cost, that doesn't change. Whether you're at 51 or up to that 86, we're able to manage all that with existing staffing. So that's what's really important, is the efficiency of the building.
Isn't it cheaper to get a different county to house our prisoners?
Yep, and we've gone over that over and over in our subcommittee. We've got two issues. The first is nobody wants them. And the second is when they get to a capacity rate, they will give us 30-day notice to say, vacate your inmates. So there is no county, no sheriff that is going to take unequivocally, no questions asked, forever our inmates. And I've worked that out as much as I could with the adjacent counties as well as counties around the state. And that's just a fact. This isn't something we can just pawn off on another community because they have their own community to serve, just like we have a community to serve. So while that remains a great short-term option that we utilize, that's not a long-term solution to what is inherent in our operations. We can't just shift that obligation to another county because, again, in all my conversations, they said, Matt, we'll hold some of your inmates, but we're going to give you a 60-day notice when we don't want them anymore. So there, we're going to be standing out on the corner. So as
Is
far
this
as
the
planning,
violent or non-violent people you're talking about?
typically in a jail setting, these are non-violent. These are the short-term ones. If there is something that's violent, that's greater than a 12-month sentence, that's going off to prison. So anything 12 months or less, typically in a misdemeanor or criminal, not felony, those are staying in our local jail. So these are literally people from our community.
Can't you get have them go to psychiatrists and get some work done with them?
Oh, we do
To
that.
bring them back into the society?
Absolutely. And that's why we want to talk about programming. That's a bigger part of this project than just housing. We don't want to just stack people up and say, there, now you've done your 60 days, get out. We want to get to why are they doing it? Why are they in our jail? And let's do the programming, the addiction services, the psychological. Those are things that we can do, but we have to have the facility to do them. That's the fact of it. So you're absolutely right. Programming is a huge part of this.
Can't
that we
you
can
do
change
that
behavior.
in the private businesses?
Can we do that in private
You
businesses?
get psychiatrists from private companies? to
We
do it?
actually do have psychiatric care that comes into the jail for our inmates. That is a part of it. But again, we can't just give them a free pass and say, go ahead and go see your psychiatrist. These are people that are remanded to the jail. While there are some that may be on Huber, there are some we put on electronic monitoring. There are some that don't have those options. So we have to bring those services to them. Whether that's job training, education, addiction services, there are people that are remanded to the jail that we can't just put out with a pass and say, come back when you're ready. This is just a fact of what we do. And we do our best to try to utilize electronic monitoring and other options to keep that population down. But at the end of the day, there are people that are remanded to the jail by the judge. And that's just the obligation we have as a county.
Are there other questions? Supervisor Kennard?
I'm going to take my mask off for a second here. So I have a couple questions. Matt, if we go back to page 5, that one pod that's shown there isn't a future plan for another pod. We don't feel there'd ever be a reason. I mean, we've got all the other future diagrams on there, but is there a future spot for a second pod if never?
Yes, there is. It would be to the south.
Okay.
Yeah, if north is up. Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't dash that in on this.
And that
drawing.
does work out. It works with the flow of how it's
Yes,
set up.
yeah.
Okay. My second question, on page 6, is there contingency fund? I guess I'm used to seeing those words, contingency fund, when you're in a building project, that there's money there. So when things
There
come
is.
up, okay, where is it?
There is contingency in the construction budget, probably 5%. Typically.
Are you talking of that 20% that's there in
No,
line
no,
2
I'm
on
talking
page 6?
about the 16.9. We
Okay,
have,
so
there are multiple pockets of contingency in these numbers.
Okay.
At the phase that we're at a concept level where we're talking strictly about square footages, our cost estimator would be making allowances throughout that entire estimate. And then on top of that, there's also a line called design contingency in that first phase. We also carry, and that design phase contingency is quite high at the beginning of the project. And as we learn more about its design, that percentage comes down because we're answering questions that haven't been answered. But then finally, during the construction phase, there's also a construction phase contingency because there are going to be some unknowns, and those unknowns primarily, if not often, deal primarily with the site and the fact that we don't know that much about it at this point.
Okay, so ultimately, if that contingency, if it's $4 million or $3 million and there's money left over at the end, obviously it comes off our bottom line, correct?
Correct.
And you talked about that in finance, a bit about the site. There could be additional cost on that.
Well, it's a cornfield. We know that there's some homes that have been built to the west, and so they have basements, no doubt. And so we can probably feel fairly confident that the soils in that part of town, Kewaunee, are buildable. I'm not trying to create a scare in anyone's mind when I say that, but we just don't know what's underneath that. And so one of the things that we would be recommending with the county would be to take soil borings where the building would be located. So then our structural engineers can be assured that we can use a conventional foundation for the building. I think that's probably going to be the case as it will be. But the jail pod is quite a heavy structure. It's all precast concrete. So we just want to be certain that we understand what the soil conditions are. And then if you've ever been out to the site, it's actually not really flat. There's some undulations to it. There's a almost a wetland that runs through from southwest to northeast. And we want to be able to identify those, where those areas are. I've tried my best with what we've got to try to place the building outside of that area. But I think we need to know where those are located so that when we regrade the site for the building, we need to have a flat piece of property to do that. And the survey would provide that information for us as well.
There's not bedrock or anything there. I don't
No,
know if Kewaunee doesn't have that.
no, not in this part of the state. If we were out further west, I think we would
We
encounter
have
that.
bedrock in Luxembourg when we've been through a lot of construction here. So that's
Well,
the reason I'm asking.
And
you,
then,
so.
yeah, I'm not Superman. I don't know what's under the ground, and that's
So-
why we want to take the soil boring.
So you don't do borings before we get any farther than us approving phase 3 before any of that would happen?
Well, I think it's kind of a package deal in a sense. Phase 3 authorizes us to begin doing the design work that I've outlined for you tonight. And running parallel to that, we would be asking and recommending that the board do soil borings and a site survey, so that at some point during this phase of the project, which is roughly 2 months of time, we would have a soils report back that we could share with our structural engineer and the Samuels group, so that we could make, again, that informed decision about the type of footings and foundations that would go under this building.
One last question for you. Maybe I'm missing it, and I think there's a percentage in here, but what is the actual cost? Maybe the committee knows that, but what is the actual cost?
$160,000. Roughly.
And that's not including if the soil boring and other things that would be
That's correct.
possibly done would be on top of that. Other questions? Supervisor Wagner?
I think it would be helpful, I guess, just going back a little bit, as far as the cost of, it was discussed a little bit about housing prisoners out of county. But in the first committee that we put together, that was one of the options that we looked at, and it was one of the options that was priced. And that total, I believe, was $1.9 million per year. It's probably closer now to say that it would be $2 million a year if you would try to pursue that. So, and that was also a number that came into play quite prominently. If you're looking at trying to remodel this jail that's there, well, while you're remodeling, you'd have to move prisoners somewhere else. You can't house them in the same building. So you would be spending $2 million a year to house them somewhere else while you're remodeling the first one. And that's what brought the first committee to building on a greenfield site, so we wouldn't have to incur those costs.
Other questions for Mr. Kane? Supervisor Lukes, then Supervisor Augustine?
To approve this phase 3, you're talking about $163,000. Wouldn't it be better if we knew where the board stood as far as approving it before we spent $160,000? Is a lot of money. What advantage of approving this now before the board approves the project?
Well,
You mean a complete project?
Yes, this phase 3 for the schematic, you're talking
I
163,000.
think that might be out of Mr. Kane's realm.
So I
but-
guess it's not a matter, unless I'm wrong, but it's been my impression that the board isn't necessarily entertaining the idea of approving this, that they're looking at putting this to referendum.
The board would have, let me give you a little bit of background, because not everybody is been in attendance or wasn't able to be and is on the jail study committee. The jail study committee, that separate committee. So you have two options. The board could approve. And I'm not recommending this. Okay, so stay calm. The board could approve the construction of the jail, but could not approve the operation of it. So that would be a strange thing. You'd have to go to referendum to approve, the spending for the operation of it. So my position obviously is that the board would take the entire project to referendum. But you're asking a different question, I think, and that is whether or not the board would approve allowing it to go to referendum. Am I correct?
No, my question is, why wouldn't we approve the project or the referendum or the board before we go ahead with the spending the money for the schematic design?
So you
Because
wanna-
if it fails, the money is out the window.
So you're suggesting, so what your question is, why not go to referendum? Why not take it to referendum before approving this money? Is that it?
That's my question.
Got it.
Valid
Go
point.
ahead, Sheriff.
So, in order to really do an effective job, because ultimately I hope that we're all in agreement that we want it to succeed, correct? If this goes to referendum, I gotta believe that we're all of consensus that we want it to be a successful referendum, right? So to do that, we really need those details, those itemizations that are provided in phase 3. As John had mentioned, even just the whole idea of staffing, we've got to be able to drill down on the ebb and flow of this building and get a solid schematic floor plan to be able to answer those questions. That directly relates to what the chair talked about with operational costs, because that's staffing. So I think right now with what we have in front of us, basically just a general dot on a map, I can't sell that to the community. That's vague. Even as a taxpayer, I would say I want more. It's like basically buying a car on an Etch-a-Sketch picture. We've got to be able to show more detail and more designs to be able to sell this, because ultimately that's what we're going to have to do in the next couple of years, getting ready for 2022, is selling it. And so if we're going to be successful, we really need that last phase. That's the part of it, is to be able to really capture all the details we need, not only from the vision, the observation of it, but really that whole ebb and flow in the operations. What is going to be that operating budget that we're also going to be going to the taxpayers for? And if we don't go to phase 3, those are just rough numbers. And I wouldn't be comfortable going to the taxpayers with rough numbers. I think we owe it to them to be able to refine this, both from a building design as well as operational costs. We owe it to them to be as detailed and accurate as we can be. And the only way we can be accurate is for that to go to phase 3. Second part of your question, what if it fails? I want to be very clear about this. We have put ourselves in a position where failure is not an option. I hope we all understand that. I've been working this solid for about the last 6 to 8 years. This isn't something that we're going to shelve for another 20. So the worst case scenario, if this goes to referendum, is either a yes or a not now. And that not now is going to be a temporary not now, because we're going to have to circle back up and go at it again. And so all this work that we're going to be doing in phase 3 remains relevant. We're not going to shelve this thing and come up with a whole new design in 20 years. We've painted ourselves in a corner. This is our only option. And again, that's why I would ask that we approach this with a sense of optimism, with a sense of victory, and not with a sense of defeatism. All right? Because we all have to be selling this project together. This is an absolute necessity. We've exhausted all other options. That jail over in Kewaunee, that's like riding on a tank of gas and the red light's blinking. All right? Like the jail inspector said, you folks are skating. You're skating well, but you're skating. That's where we are in Kewaunee County. So I hope I paint a fairly good picture of where we are. So I'll leave it there.
Supervisor Augustine?
My question or comment kind of ties to what Joe was saying too, before we spend that $163,000 on phase 3. Nowhere in this phase process do I see in here where we're going to secure financing or pay for the staffing. One of the things we do in the private sector before we go ahead and start doing designs and that kind of stuff is we figure out how we're going to pay for it first. So that kind of concerns me before we go and spend more money, is how are we actually going to pay for this project if we do this project?
Typically on projects, and I'll use Trempealeau County as an example, while we're designing the project, the county has been actively answering the question about financing with their bond counsel. So it's kind of a running, two tracks running parallel with each other. So you can begin and need to start that discussion with your bond counsel now and your finance director as to what options you would have to finance the project. But you will have a much more, as I say, you'll have a much more accurate understanding of what the project will cost at the completion of phase 3 of the project. And that's really the main point of having you spend the money to complete this portion of the project. But sir, your question is correct and your answer is correct. You want to be working on financing now as well.
I guess it's just kind of concerning. People in the community are asking how we're going to pay for it, what are taxes going to go up, and I don't think we have any solid numbers for those people yet. So that's kind of concerning right there. It seems like we're moving ahead on certain parts that maybe we should take a step back and figure out what it's actually going to cost on this exact project, the taxpayer.
So to your point, you're absolutely right, but there's no way we can provide those answers until we drill down and get more detail. So you're absolutely right. And I can't answer those questions. I get the same questions. We've got some ballpark figures, but I can't answer that question until we get the detail to be able to show what are going to be the necessary staffing levels. What is it going to be drilled down in costs a little bit more accurately? Because I've had these same conversations. And so, yeah, the best you can say is this is about what it's going to be on a $100,000 home or X amount per thousand. That's about the best we're going to be able to do. But again, we have to get it through this point to get to what and you're absolutely right. And I'd be the same way, but we're still in foggy numbers. We're in foggy design, foggy budgetary numbers. That's phase 2. That wasn't intended to give us what we need. Phase 3 is intended to give us what we need for your questions.
But one of the questions I've been presented with too is, I know we need to do something, Sheriff, and our jail is in tough condition, but is there something out there that we can put to referendum, spend this amount, or this amount, instead of just saying we're going to build a $20 million jail facility?
And that's exactly what we did. We started this off with a typical construction where you have the jail, the administrative offices, a sheriff's department with, garages. And we did something unique in Kewaunee County. We stripped it down. We took that from a $35 million project and stripped it down to a $20 million project. So all that work has been done in the subcommittee to really peel it away and keep saying, can we do better? Can we sharpen the pencil? So all that work has been done. But what we have to caution is that we stripped this thing so far back that it's dysfunctional, that it ends up costing us more because we have to add staffing because of some poor design or mismanagement that we didn't factor for. So we've got to be very careful, because we did visit some jails where they had to add staff. They were propping open security doors because it was just a poor design. So we've got that sweet spot of budgetary and fiscal responsibility and functionality. And we got to make sure we balance those two and not go too far.
What is the population of Trimble County?
Can I look it up on my phone? I don't know.
I mean, you built it, that's where you're building the jail after, that's the jails, right?
Yes.
So you should know what the population is.
Of the county?
We know what it is here.
While he looks that up, are there any other questions? Supervisor Lazansky, then Supervisor Kroll.
So like we've been saying, and like what Matt says.
Hold it. Yeah, okay, just.
29,500.
29,500.
Okay, sorry, Supervisor Lazansky, go ahead.
Like we've been talking about, and like Sheriff Matt has said, that we all know that we have to move forward. And even when we go into construction, it's going to be a few years before that jail is there. So with that being said, we have to sell this to our constituents, and a way to sell it is to complete phase 3. Then we'll be able to answer questions rather than not be able to answer questions, and then have a better vote for going forward on a referendum. And also, I'm just wondering about I would think that we should do that soil boring soon, in case there are any problems, then we can move more correctly with phase 3. And I'm wondering if I would guess that's an insignificant amount over the whole project. Do you know approximately what that would cost?
We're thinking soil borings are roughly $7,000 to $8,000. The site survey, roughly $7,000 to $8,000.
You never know what's going to happen in Kewaunee, so I'm thinking that that's like a next step.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Kroll, then Supervisor Mastler.
Could we do a referendum with this idea of moving forward that 160,000, opening it up to our county, having used to talk to them what our next step is so that we involve our county and they see how important this is, and involving them in doing a referendum that way? Is that possible?
Everything's possible. That would be your decision to make.
That would be the decision of the board ultimately.
Yeah, I want to remind you that we were talking about this in finance. The cost of construction goes up roughly 4% every year. and that's compounded. Think about where we are today. Think about where we would be a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now. The cost of the project is never going to go down. It's only going to go up. And so I don't want to suggest that going to referendum for the $160,000 is a bad idea, but it probably adds, what, another year to the cost of the project to do that? Just simply to keep that in mind.
Can I ask one more question? So, Matt, this might be for you. So our surrounding counties, Manitowoc, Door County, Green Bay, are some of those jails over, like, where they're maxed already and they're looking for where to take their inmates?
Yes, both Manitowoc and Brown. Brown is complete, basically working on it right now. And the sheriff has told me the minute they open the doors, they're packed. So Brown's out of the question. Manitowoc, Door is willing, and we do send inmates up there now to try to alleviate the pressure. But she's been very clear, and it's well within the right, that she said, Matt, that's great, we'll take them. But as soon as we hit any point, any circumstance whatsoever, even if they just don't like the way the wind's blowing, they're just going to say, guess what, pick your inmates up. That is no way to operate a jail. We cannot subject ourselves to that kind of vulnerability.
So can I ask this? Is there something that we can do when we do this to put a proposal in to house inmates from these surrounding counties that are full, to bring money into our county and present that also? So at the same time as we are spending money in our county for this jail, we are also going to bring money into our county, bringing in housing other inmates where they are overcapacitated.
Absolutely. We do house, even though we're, as small as we are, whenever we're able, we have housed other counties for unique circumstances. So that's always going to be a possibility. The one thing I caution against is when we go back to the project years back, it was trying to be sold on housing outside inmates. And I know the community will understand spending money to take care of our own, to take care of our members of the community that are in our jail. But I don't think they're going to be interested in bringing inmates from Milwaukee County or Dane County or these other places under any circumstances, unless it's, very short term, which is what we do. So yes, there would be, we also have agreements with probation and parole, Department of Corrections, where we are housing probation holds. So there's revenue that we do generate out of that jail for housing different unique, inmates from whether it's county or state DOC for probation holds. But again, these are our community members. The other thing in regards to trying to put everything to referendum, tonight at finance, they approved some expenditures on a truck. The argument is say, man, we should really put that to referendum. Every year you spend money on a budget. We know that's an absolute necessity, right? We don't go to referendum. I don't believe what's going to happen is we're going to have referendum fatigue. If we back this up and each time that there's a decision point, let's send this out to the whole 20,000. That's why we're here. That's why we're here, to make these tough decisions. And in regards to that 160,000 financially, at the end of last year, when we got our end of budget, due to all the circumstances of 2020, I sent back over 100,000 into the general fund from the Sheriff's Department. So I do want to make that statement that due to what we experienced last year and all the management that we did to try to keep our costs down, we did send over 100,000 back into your general fund, the very place that this would be then requested to come from. So it's not like we're asking for, some brand new pot of money. We did contribute significantly to that in 2020. So, that helps offset it. I think that's something worth considering.
Supervisor Mastler? Yeah. Got to turn your microphone on.
I'm sorry about that. I just did some rough numbers here, and using John's figure of 4% for every year that we delay. The first year, we're going to go from a projected budget of $20,280,000. Delaying 1 year, that will bring it to $21,080,000. The following year, because you got to remember we're compounding now. I hope everybody knows what compounding means. It's going to be $840,000, and it's going to get nothing but worse. And within 3 years, it will be over $1 million per year for every year we delay. Just remember, we defeated back in 2000. Chuck, does this sound familiar? A complete justice center, which included a courthouse, a 120-bed jail, We defeated that. That would have cost us $13 million. All right. Just to build the jail and the sheriff's department and the garage came in at 35 million. That didn't include the courthouse. We haven't addressed that issue, and that's another issue coming up in the next couple of years. So the longer we put this thing off, the more money it's going to cost each and every one of us. Is it going to hurt? Yeah, it's going to hurt. Some of us more than others, but it's going to hurt. The thing is, how long do we want to continue to put this off? And we're going to, instead of a $20 million investment this year, we'll have a $30 or $40 million investment within 7 years. I'm not ready for that. You know, we made a mistake once. If we don't learn off of the mistake that was made a long time ago, we have to be fools. And maybe we don't belong here if that's the case.
Any other questions? Supervisor Dell.
I have just one question. If we would go ahead with this whole project, say from today till it was built, with continuing the phases of phase 3 and so on, when would that be built, completed?
The construction, the
Yes.
completion of the construction.
The whole building, everything done, moved in?
Without the referendums?
No, with.
Okay. I don't know if I know when the referendums are going to be planned.
Spring of
I mean, if you
22
go
would
ahead with
be-
everything right away.
Spring of 22 is when it could go to referendum.
Okay. So our work on this phase might take roughly 2 months. And so our work is done until the referendum is voted on. So trusting that it would pass, I'm thinking out loud, spring of 2022, we could go out to bid in the fall of 2022. And it's probably 18 months construction. I'm looking at Britt, 18 months maybe. So what is that? The fall of 2022, fall 23, the summer of 2024. Is that right?
Okay, that answers my question, but I think everybody should realize where we're sitting on this. We're not thinking of this number at 20 million. I mean, it's going to be way up there because we ain't gonna be able to do anything.
You will see on page 6 at the top, to be bid of fall of 2021. That was at least how this number was put together. And at the time that this was developed, there was not a clear understanding of what, when and how the referendum would apply to the project. And we're learning now in discussion that the referendum wouldn't happen until the spring. And I understand the reason for the referendum. But the capital program does not require the referendum. It's the operating costs that will require the referendum because it affects the mill rate.
So if the supervisors want, all you got to do is get 10 votes plus 1, and you can go ahead and build it without referendum, and you get going that much quicker. You count me out of that, but that's all you got to do.
I hope I've been able to answer your questions this evening.
I have one other question for you, and this came to me kind of late, and so this is off the wall, and you may not be able to answer it, but was there ever, and I wasn't involved with this back then, the prison over in Green Bay, that's in worse shape than our jail. And I was asked about, and that is going to be replaced. It just will. I mean, I know the governor vetoed it, but that's going to happen. And there is a good chance that that would go to Kewaunee County. There was certainly a strong discussion before. What would be the cost of adding? Would there be the possibility of adding a pod, the county, onto that? And any idea what that would cost? I know that you're just, that's a little
So
bit.
I was part of those conversations.
You don't want to do that.
I was part of those conversations, and really basically at the front end, the deal killer is you cannot co-locate jail inmates with prison inmates, two very different things. So we couldn't just say, hey, let's just dedicate a wing to Kewaunee County's jail population. That is an entire separate thing. The jail inspector, that is a no-go as far as blending those two together. That'd be like putting juveniles and adults together. So the prison is the prison, and what they do, I wish them the best of luck, but that cannot be any way seen as a solution to a jail, facility circumstance. It's just the two are not allowed to blend. So that was something that we did discuss when all that was being, bantered around, and I was on the phone with the state, finding out what could and couldn't be done. And that is a no-go in regards to blending those populations.
Yes, Supervisor Teske.
On your page 5, you have some additions to the jail of a sheriff's office, sheriff's garage, and the future courthouse or courtroom. In your expertise, those 3 parcels or additions to the building, how much is that going to cost? Because you're telling me that you're not going to do these additions right away. So I want to know roughly how much those 3 places, buildings are going to cost, or additions are going to cost.
The dashed lines to the right representing the sheriff and the garage have been budgeted as part of the phase 2. And I'm recalling it was 35 million, I believe. So those dashed lines pretty accurately represent the spaces or the square footage that we were carrying in the original proposal when it was both a jail and a sheriff's office and garage. The dashed line for the new courthouse is simply a placeholder based on other projects that we've done of similar size counties, such as Trumpealo County, where we were doing a courthouse there.
So then that 20,000 isn't really right. Project budget is not really right then. If you're telling me those 2 are incorporated, would be 35 then instead of 20.
But as I just stated at the beginning of the project, when we were talking about the work preceding to where we are today, the initial recommendation was to build what we call a law enforcement center, or a public safety center that included both the jail and the sheriff. And that was the $35 million. It was felt that that was too much as a first phase. And so the committee recommended that we go back and look at the jail only for $20 million, but that we design the site to be able to allow that future sheriff's office addition be built at some future date, but it's not part of the 20 million.
Any other questions for Mr. Cade and Supervisor Kinnard?
Question for Scott. Scott, I assume that $163,000 is sitting somewhere sort of earmarked for phase 3?
I did not put the,
It's on a tree.
yeah, it's under my mattress. I did not budget a specific dollar amount into the 2021 budget, unsure as to what the cost would be. It had always been my assumption that when we were to cross that bridge, that we would come before you as a county board and ask that money be taken from the general fund to therefore pay for phase 3, similar to what we had done in phase 1 as well. As phase 2 for sure. And so there is not a specific dollar amount that is set aside. It's in the general fund, which is, we would then transfer.
Supervisor Vollenweider, then Supervisor Poppy.
So the referendum, obviously, one of the questions is going to be, what is the cost to the taxpayer? If we're presuming the cost of this budget, the projected cost of this project is $20 to $21 million. We've got a known number of the current jail operational cost per year. What does that translate to for a taxpayer annually?
So we're working with Mr. Kunish in regards to those numbers, but we have to realize that's one of the reasons for the referendum. If we could operate that jail with the same staffing levels of what we've been doing for the last 50 years, that would be great. But we have been woefully understaffed for 50 years. And this is, with this movement, we have to change that. The jail inspector has been saying it for years. Typically in a county jail environment, as well as a 911 communications, you have 2 jailers, 2 dispatchers. Go anywhere. Go anywhere, and that is your staffing model. We, for the past 50 years, have had jailer dispatchers. So your jailer was your dispatcher was your jailer. We saved the county millions of dollars over the last 50 years by doing that. And maybe over the years, we should have been building up and walking away from that model, but there's never a good time, right? Every year it's cut, cut, cut. So we've stayed in that model. We have to now migrate into this model where we have dedicated jailers and dedicated dispatchers. We have to get into the 21st century. So the operational costs, again, as part of phase 3, what we're trying to do is realize, are there any hybrids? Are there any places where we can take staffing and move those between the jail and the communication center to save staffing? These are some of those tough questions that we've got to try to answer to arrive at the numbers you're looking for. But to do it off of phase 2, we can't, because we don't know, are we going to need this amount of staff, this amount of staff? We have to know how we're going to floor plan that thing out to be able to create that ebb and flow. Because otherwise we're just, we're basically, we're somewhat lying to our taxpayers. If we're just, throwing spitballs at a wall, we've got to drill down and be more accurate. And that staffing is a big part of what you're speaking to. So I wouldn't speak to it right now with the little information we have. We have to drill down and get further to be able to answer that question, which is what we want to then be able to go out on the road show and share with the public. I've just got nothing I can share with them. I can run around with these pictures, and I went up and down First Street, and I visited with all the property owners adjacent to that site. They were all great. They were supportive. They're like, yeah, nobody likes taxes, but you know what, Matt? We know you need it. You've been talking about it for years. We know it's a necessity. So people get it. I don't think we should be as worried as we are that people don't have that kind of logical sense. They get it. We've been screaming at this for the last decade that, even 20 years back when the thing failed the first time. So I don't think anybody thinks that the problem was solved. We just put it on mothballs. But we've got to get them good information that I or the chair or Administrator Feld or you, any one of you can then be able to confidently go out and say, here's the numbers, here's the reality. But we've got to get better data.
Well, what can we gain from Trempealeau County? So if they've got essentially the same population we do, how many beds did they build for, and what was the cost of their jail?
Right, and I don't have that answer. And again, remember, they didn't just build a jail, they built the Justice Center. So they did do the whole courts, the Sheriff's Department, they did the whole thing. We're just looking at that small pod. So they're gonna have costs that we don't have. They're gonna have increased, janitorial, whatever. So I would hesitate to just copy and paste from another county. I think we as Kewaunee County have to do our due diligence. We have to do our own homework. I don't think we can borrow somebody else's homework. We've got to do our own homework based on the realities of what we find out in phase 3. I think we owe it to the taxpayers to do a good job at what our tasks were in order to give them the proper information. That's our job. It's our obligation, and I don't want to shortchange them.
Supervisor Poppy.
You want answers?
Oh, go ahead.
Trumpealeau County is $40 million for the Justice Center. And it's a roughly 100 bed housing pod. And that also includes the sheriff's office and an indoor garage.
Supervisor Poppy, you had a question?
Yeah, I did. The question was, are we trying to approve $160,000 tonight or 176?
Well, when we get to the resolution, what number did we put in?
In the original resolution, it has 160,000. If we wanted to also then do the soil borings and site survey, we could add $16,000 to that amount.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
Thank you.
Scott, do you have a report?
I would, but I think we've been here a good amount of time.
I'm going to take all of the reports, all of the minutes. I'm going to take those combined, except for we'll ask Cindy if there. I'll take questions on other reports first, then we'll ask Cindy to give any update on COVID. Are there questions on any reports from any of the minutes that you received and have reviewed? Yes, sir, Supervisor Wagner.
Thank you. I actually have a number of them or some comments quickly. In the highway department, I was wondering if they would like to, maybe they should be looking at, I read through there about brush clearing and stuff like that. And I've noticed myself, there's a lot of dead trees have been falling. You get windy periods and there's stuff falling into the right of ways and stuff like that. As emerald ash borer gets more and more prominent in the county, there's going to be a lot more of this. And I do know that we had part of that should be in that emerald ash borer management plan that we put together about 15 years ago. So it might be, something to look at that. In extension, I wanted to mention that I hope everyone would read and understand the educators' reports to get a sense of just how many people they are interacting with in this county and how much they are, working with. We've said this a number of times that some of these departments in the county are best kept secrets and things like that. People don't understand just how important they are. But if you look and read those educator reports, I think that would be very helpful. In the Human Services Board or the committee, I just want to say something, and this is a little bit personal here because this has happened just in the last couple of days. But I want to compliment Missy Anoy, Melissa Anoy, and her staff, Jody Vandervest in particular. I've had the privilege, I guess, or misfortunate privilege of watching them perform, watching Jody perform yesterday, performing her magic with someone in our community. And it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. And I don't think that this board or a number of people here really truly understands the level of work and professionalism that these people bring to their occupation every day. And it's just, I can't give them enough compliments. They're doing just a fantastic job. As well as in our public health department, Cindy is doing a phenomenal job balancing an act that's just unreal. Lastly, I want to bring up, I took a ride the other day in Red River Park down in town of Red River. If anybody's familiar with the park, there used to be a road that went down and made a loop close to the shoreline. There's only about 5 feet of pavement left of that road. The rest of it's gone out into the bay. There's going to need an awful lot of coordinated, but I also want to compliment, I think there was a very good job done on the plan. That's all I've got to say.
Any questions, corrections, or anything else on any of the minutes for any of the minutes and the committees? All right, very well. Cindy, would you care to give us an update, please?
Sure. As far as COVID goes right now in the county, we are at 2,430 positive cases. 77 right now are active. We have over 8,300 that have tested negative. Big news for us is that we have started vaccinating in the last 3 weeks, and it's quite an undertaking. So as of today, we had 497 vaccines that have been given out through the health department. By the end of tomorrow, we will be at 659. Just to recap what we've been doing over the last 3 weeks, we have vaccinated our EMS, our fire, police. We have about 1/2 of our CBRFs that agreed to go through us for vaccination, and they were completed. The other half will go through the CVS Walgreens pharmacy contract and will be done probably sometime in the next week or two. Both of our skilled nursing facilities are 100% vaccinated as well. We have reached out to all of our eye, dental, chiropractic offices, and all that have agreed for vaccine are completed for their first round. Funeral homes have been completed on their first round. The coroner's office has been completed, and we also reached out to clergy throughout the county. As of today, we started our 65+ population. To put that into perspective, there are over 700,000 of them in the state that have a potential to need vaccination. We're getting about 70,000 doses a week. It will take months to get that entire population completed. How this vaccination thing works is that every Monday night at 9 p.m., I get a survey that asks how many doses we require for first round. I put in my number or my request. That request is not guaranteed. And sometime on Saturday, the following Saturday, I receive notification if and how much we will receive. And then we have to pick a day for delivery. So we get about 48 hours to plan. This last week was a little frustrating. We asked for 500 doses for this week. We had 528 people that were scheduled to get their vaccines between today and Thursday. We received 200 doses. So after scheduling 528 people, we canceled 328 of them. So there is a significant level of frustration that goes along with that. And then we can't guarantee the delivery time. So as of today, we were supposed to have our vaccine by 9 a.m. Fortunately for us, we had a very kind state trooper that ran it out by noon for us so that we could actually start our clinic on time, because the state, in my opinion, dropped the ball on getting that to us on time too, didn't hold to their word. So we have a fair level of frustration. In addition, a lot of the people that we are vaccinating require us to vaccinate at different hours of the day. So my staff has been out for the last 3 weeks vaccinating most evenings to accomplish all of our volunteer, fire, rescue, and some of the businesses that don't have that ability to let us in during the day. So it's been a long couple of weeks, and hopefully we see some improvement coming forward. But I think this is going to be probably the biggest challenge that we face, is trying to meet that vaccination level adequately without any guarantee of any numbers or to guarantee our planning. It's quite the challenge. As of March 1st, they announced today that they will open up not just to the 65-year-olds, but then we're going to increase it to education, childcare, public-facing essential workers, postal, our utility workers, and all congregate living settings. So they are opening up faster than what they're providing us vaccine, and it's not a great situation. What we've done at our office is developed a waiting list, which is a nightmare in and of itself. So we have over 1,500 people on that waiting list. And as of right now, we're trying to take about 200 a week off. So we'll see how that goes. It has completely overwhelmed our office. Our front desk is receiving somewhere between 30 and about 70 calls every half an hour. So it's been a challenge just to even get the phone calls in, the emails in. So just future reference, if you call the health department in the next few months, it might be a challenge to get through to anybody, because it's been a bit overwhelming. Any questions for me on COVID? Yeah, Linda.
I just want to know, which vaccine are you getting?
Currently, right now, we get Pfizer. But in our survey that I completed from last night, it did say, are you open to any and all brands? So I think as other brands become available, you'll see us kind of have a hodgepodge. And then what they're going to do is send you so many doses of what you've given in the past to meet, because a person can't get two different kinds. So it's just going to be kind of you're going to have to orchestrate it very well as to making sure that the vaccine given is what they've received and moving forward with anything new. Yeah.
When you give the vaccine, does one vaccine shot consist of 2 shots? So if they give you 200 this week, are you guaranteed 228 days to revaccinate those?
That's what they
200
tell
people?
us. But I lost a lot of faith in everything that they say this week. So I don't know. What they're saying is that for every dose that you give first round, they are holding one for you and it will be received 21 days later. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How does the 65-year-old, I have a couple people calling me all the time. How do the 65-year-olds go ahead to make their appointment to get vaccinated?
So they can either call our office directly, we put them on the waiting list. They can email into us. So the new website has a, correct me if I'm wrong, contact us tab. Yeah. So they can put that in there and then I receive that email directly and then those emails are added to the waiting list. Or people have just kind of given us a shout out depending on what groups they're in and we've been formulating those lists as we go.
So in order for them to get the vaccine is to contact you.
Correct. They can also call their doctor's office. Some of the doctor's offices are providing vaccines right now. More often they're having one general location. So for instance, Provea might be out at UWGB. Bellin has got something out on the west side in Ashwaubenon, and they can go to those sites too if they can get an appointment.
So by talking to you now, is it better for them to contact you or their doctor?
I wish I could answer that, Doug, because I don't think the doctor's offices are any more guaranteed their allocations as we are. It's kind of free for all right now. So my goal right now is to do 200 new people a week. And then that will put us at vaccinating about 400 people a week because we should be getting 200 second doses in addition. Linda?
Are those doses going to be, say round 2?
For your second dose?
Yeah.
Yes.
Will they say that then when it comes? Do you know?
Yes. So my email says you will receive 200 doses of Pfizer for round 1. And right now it says 0 for round 2 because I don't start round 2 till next week. Correct. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
All right.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
I don't know if you can hear me at the meeting, but the audio is muted online, so I can't hear anything.
Okay, I did that on purpose. I have no control over that. Not your audio, I muted your, not the hearing, but the speaking. Supervisor Romden.
In the body of the resolution, there's a statement in there that the Finance Committee approves or recommends this expenditure, and the Finance Committee met tonight. We took no action. We didn't recommend one way or the other in support or in opposition of this resolution.
So the resolution that did not pass, then the Finance Committee did not pass that resolution then that they had before them.
Would that
I
mean
had to
then
step
we're
out of
actually
the-
approving this resolution with that correction made?
Well, if you pass this resolution, that would have to be corrected then. Yes? I
The
don't have Liz
resolution,
Mickey
if,
here, so-
if the board were to approve this, basically lines 7 and 8 would be removed from the resolution.
Okay, so 7 and 8 would be removed. Other discussion? All right. Yes, sorry, who, where, what?
I wanted to ask Mr. Feld, what is our present debt in the county?
At the end of 2020, I believe it is 9.65 million, just a smidge over 10% of our legal debt capacity.
And about 7 years ago, it was about 25 million.
I'm not sure what it was 7 years ago, but we have consistently paid off our debts since we've been here, and we will continue to prepay as best as we can through a Finance Committee policy that says that any general fund surplus, that 10% of that surplus automatically goes into the debt service fund to help prepay any debt that we have outstanding.
Supervisor Wagner.
I guess just to add one thing, that the total debt, or the highest in the past 20 years, I believe that the county was in debt was around $17 million. Back in 2000, late 99, when the previous Justice Center project was proposed, the county had no debt at that time.
Any other discussion?
Just to put in perspective, we're asking for $179,000. Nothing against Todd and the highway department, but we just spent another $173,000 in a couple purchases. So we're talking about some long-term issue here that we've been dealing with. So let's keep it in perspective of where we spend money.
Any other discussion? We will proceed to roll call vote.
Augustine,
No.
Baker. Dell,
Yes.
Gillett,
Yay.
Haskey. Yonke. Kinnard,
Yes.
Kroll. Luzansky,
Yes.
Lucas. Massler,
Yes.
Olson,
No.
Poppy,
Yes.
Heisler, absent. Romden. Swago,
No.
Teske. Vollenweider,
Aye.
Wagner,
Yes.
Wolkes.
No.
11 to 8.
Motion passes. Moving on to communications. Resolutions from other counties.
From Price County, support legislation to align detention hearing deadlines in Wisconsin statutes, Chapter 48 and 938. From Kenosha County, resolution supporting the commitment to veteran support and outreach. From Price County, revised Wisconsin Act 67 to return authority on conditional use permits to local control. From Jackson County, a resolution in support of state funding for equitable return of utility tax collections to counties and municipalities as utility aid. From Jackson County, request to review funding for APS and increase long-term care placement locations within Wisconsin. And from Eau Claire County, support pending legislation to amend hearing timeframes for juveniles taken into custody under Wisconsin statutes, Chapter 938, to coincide with hearing timelines for children taken into custody under Wisconsin statutes, Chapter 48.
Kewaunee County events. No events. Slow month. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes,
I think,
Supervisor Swago.
with Scott Yonke on the Parks Committee, they're making snow as weather
Oh, yeah.
or conditions appear.
Yankee, you were showing me a picture during the break about the skating rink. How come you're not piping up and saying something on that?
Because we're
You wanna
running
go-
long.
You want to go home or what? We got all night.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, after a late start with Winter Park, we've had about 4,300 tubers already. And 138 people came out to ski the first weekend that the ski hill was open because they couldn't make snow. And as far as the ice rink, the weather finally cooperated with cold temps, and Dave worked last Friday night, put it on multiple thin layers of water to make the ice rink operational. And he said he's learning quickly. And he also just sent me that picture of the rink right now. He redid it again tonight. So there's also a lot of private groups reservations for February. And so maybe Chairman Olson could ask the man above to give us good weather for a long season.
Hey, well, yeah, okay. Like I say, I'm just in sales. You got to talk to management about that. So does Myers, does he have a Zambui?
He
Zamboni?
lightly mists. He lightly mists the water, and it's got to be real thin layers.
So he's out there with a squeegee, old school.
No, it's misting.
All right, well.
It looks nice.
All right, so you were out on the ice.
We were,
Okay.
our whole committee was.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Thank you, Scott.
I wish I had seen that. Okay, comments from the chair. Oh, unless there were other events. Okay, comments from the chair. WCA, the 2021 virtual legislative session. I know that some of you have gone to this in the past, the tentative agenda. If you are interested in doing so, Jamie will have this set up at the county boardroom during that time so that the supervisors who are taking part in that will be able to collaborate, and that will be of the obviously of the greatest benefit to the county. If you are interested in doing so, contact Jamie, okay? So if you are going to contact Jamie, did you have anything on that, Supervisor Poppy?
That's it.
Okay, excellent. And then we move on to meeting dates. We have February 9th scheduled, March 16th is scheduled. April 20th at 6 p.m. is proposed. I would need a motion for that. Supervisor Yonke. Oh, you told me there was a conflict on that, didn't you?
Every year we have this problem that our
Yeah,
town
I'm
annual
sorry.
meeting is on the third Tuesday. It's
Yeah, you
by
told me
Wisconsin
that.
statutes, yes.
You told
can-
me that, but
you
I
can
don't.
change it the year before, but our town never wants to. You can go on without me, you know.
So April 20th, what would happen if we were to move to, I wouldn't be able to do the 27th or the 13th. I could do, what would the 9th, what about, well, we would look at the next Tuesday. Could we go back to the 27th? Would that work for folks? Or is that a conflict of some sort? Otherwise, we could go to could we go to the 13th? I'm hearing no conflicts from the clerk. No, you don't care. Okay. Is there a preference on the 13th or the 27th? Mr. Felt, would there be a?
Chairman, didn't we have it on the fourth Tuesday for this past April when we, new ones, and we all came in?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Was that the fourth Tuesday in April when we started with after the election, when new ones all came in? Wasn't that on the end of April, kind of?
Could be. If you want it on the 27th, somebody make a motion and that's what it'll be if it passes.
I'll make a motion. We move it to the 27th of April.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it is set for April the 27th. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Supervisor.
No.
Yes?
Are we going to be moving it back to the administration center soon?
It didn't sound, based on what Cindy was saying earlier, it certainly didn't sound very optimistic to me on that. That'd be nice, but that's kind of determined by forces beyond our control.
I move to
Anything
adjourn.
else? Yes, motion to adjourn by Wagner, second by Vollenweider. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?